A lost civilization sank beneath the ocean millennia ago. The Legend of Atlantis is one of history's most captivating mysteries. But what if it was more than just a story? By the end of this journey, you will see how real geological forces could have inspired this ancient tale. We will investigate violent volcanic explosions and landscapes that vanished under rising seas. What sunken world could have given rise to such a powerful myth? What does our planet's turbulent history reveal about the stories we tell? Plato's dialogues are our only window into this lost world, yet the glass is clouded by time and intention. He describes Atlantis not as a mere island, but as a vast, sophisticated empire, a circular kingdom of concentric rings of land and water, rich in metals and governed by a lineage of kings. Its people grew arrogant, and after a failed invasion of prehistoric Athens, their entire island was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. This cataclysm is dated to a staggering 9,600 years before Plato's own time. That places its demise around 11,500 years ago, a date that stretches deep into our planet's last ice age. This timeline is one of the first major puzzles. Did Plato intend this as a literal historical record passed down from Egyptian priests, or was it a brilliant philosophical device, a cautionary tale about the dangers of imperial overreach meant for his fellow Athenians? The very ambiguity is what makes the legend so enduring. It gives us a detailed description and a specific time frame to investigate, a set of clues that forces us to look beyond the text and directly at the Earth itself. What real event could have been so powerful, so utterly devastating, that its memory survived for millennia, eventually finding its way into the most famous philosophical works of the ancient world? The sheer violence of the Thera Eruption defies easy comprehension. Picture a mountain tearing itself apart, its heart collapsing into a sea of fire. The island that was there simply vanished, replaced by a vast, flooded crater. This was not a slow geological process. It was a single, apocalyptic event. The scale is almost impossible to grasp. 60 cubic kilometers of rock and ash were blasted into the atmosphere, darkening skies across the region for years. The archaeological site of Crete on Santorini offers a hauntingly intimate glimpse into that final moment. Here, a vibrant Minoan town was not burned, but entombed, preserved under layers of pumice and ash. Walking through its excavated streets is like stepping into a snapshot of a civilization interrupted in mid-breath, with colorful frescoes still on the walls and storage jars still standing in place. This was a society frozen in time, a direct and poignant connection to a world lost in a single day, but the destruction did not end at the island's shores. The sudden collapse of the volcano's core into the sea would have triggered a tsunami of staggering proportions. Wave after wave, some estimates suggest over 100 feet high, would have radiated outward, crashing with unimaginable force onto the coast of Crete, the heartland of the Minoan civilization. Their great palaces and flourishing ports, located just 70 miles to the south, would have been utterly defenseless. The tsunami waves would have scoured the coastline, smashing the Minoan fleet, flooding farmlands with salt water, and devastating the economic foundation of their maritime empire. This sequence of events, a central island destroyed and a great sea power crippled by waves from the deep, echoes the core elements of the Atlantis story with uncanny precision. It presents us with a powerful question. Could the memory of this real historical cataclysm, a disaster that reshaped the ancient world, have been carried by refugees and traders across the Mediterranean? its details blurring and transforming over centuries until it was reborn as the philosophical legend of a sunken continent. Far to the north, beneath the churning grey waters of the North Sea, lies another ghost of a lost world. This was Doggerland, a vast and fertile plain that, for millennia, was the true connective tissue of northwestern Europe, a land bridge joining Britain to the continent's mainland. During the last ice age, when so much of the world's water was locked in colossal ice sheets, sea levels were dramatically lower, exposing this entire landscape. It was not a barren tundra, but a rich, low-lying territory of hills, forests, rivers, and lagoons, teeming with life and home to communities of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. They traversed this land, following herds and seasons, their world stretching continuously from what we now call the Netherlands all the way to the eastern shores of England. This was a real inhabited continent, not a mythical one. Then the world warmed. As the great glaciers retreated, they released torrents of fresh water back into the oceans. The seas began their slow, inexorable rise, a relentless encroachment that spanned generations. Coastlines were redrawn as valleys flooded and shorelines crept inland. For the people of Doggerland, it was a slow-motion disaster, a constant, gradual loss of their homeland that forced communities to retreat again and again toward the ever-shrinking higher ground. The memory of a larger, more prosperous world, slowly consumed by the waves, could easily have become woven into the oral histories of these displaced peoples. But geology suggests this gradual drowning may have been punctuated by a single, terrifying climax. Around 6,200 years before the Common Era, a catastrophic event occurred off the coast of Norway. An enormous section of the continental shelf, known as the Storegga Slide, gave way. A volume of sediment larger than entire countries plunged into the deep ocean, displacing a colossal amount of water. This movement triggered a tsunami of almost unimaginable scale. Waves, potentially dozens of feet high, would have raced across the North Sea, striking the already vulnerable low-lying plains of Doggerland with devastating force. For the remaining communities clinging to this shrinking world, this would not have been a slow rise of water, but a sudden, violent cataclysm from the sea. The final habitable islands of Doggerland were likely scoured away or made uninhabitable in this single event. Here, then, is a powerful geological template for a legend like Atlantis. Doggerland presents a dual narrative of loss, a prosperous land with a human history that was both gradually erased by rising seas and then decisively finished by a great wave. It demonstrates how the concepts of a slow sinking and a single day and night of misfortune are not mutually exclusive, but can be different chapters of the same geological story. This sunken world provides a tangible, scientifically verified example of how a vast and populated landscape can truly vanish beneath the waves, leaving behind only subtle clues on the seafloor and a profound echo in our oldest stories. Out in the vast openness of the Atlantic Ocean, a chain of volcanic islands rises from the deep, marking the peaks of a hidden world. The Azores archipelago is our next geological clue, a place where the Earth's powerful inner workings break the ocean's surface. These islands are merely the highest points of the massive Azores Plateau, a sprawling, relatively shallow region of the seabed that sits directly astride the mid-Atlantic ridge. This specific location is crucial. The ridge is a colossal underwater mountain range, a place where tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, creating new ocean floor from the planet's molten interior. It is one of the most geologically active and unstable places on Earth. Some researchers looking for Atlantis have been drawn here, noting that Plato described the Lost Kingdom as lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which many interpret as the Strait of Gibraltar. The Azores Plateau, positioned in the Atlantic directly west of that strait, seems to fit that directional clue perfectly. The theory suggests this submerged plateau could be the remnant of a larger landmass. While modern seafloor mapping confirms it is not a sunken continent, its very existence tells a compelling story. The forces of seafloor spreading and plate tectonics here are constantly reshaping the landscape. Over immense spans of time, volcanic activity can build islands up from the seabed, only for those same landmasses to later subside, erode, or be torn apart by further tectonic movement. This dynamic process provides a genuine, scientifically observed mechanism for how a substantial island, perhaps even one supporting a sophisticated society, could have formed in the Atlantic and then later vanished beneath the waves. It transforms the idea of a landmass lost at sea from pure myth into a distinct geological possibility, a drama written not in words, but in the slow, powerful language of moving continents and rising magma. Deep within the arid expanse of the Sahara, a colossal eye stares back at the sky. The Richat Structure in Mauritania is a geological marvel so immense, nearly 50 kilometers across, that its true form is only visible from orbit. From that vantage point, it reveals itself as a near-perfect series of concentric rings, like a giant's fingerprint pressed into the bedrock of the desert. Geologists understand its origin, a symmetrical dome of rock layers that has been slowly eroded over hundreds of millions of years, exposing its circular bands. Yet, for anyone familiar with Plato's account, the sight is immediately arresting. He described the capital city of Atlantis as a series of concentric rings, alternating between land and water. While the Richat structure is clearly not a sunken city, its layout is a mirror image of that ancient description, etched not by human hands but by the slow, patient forces of geology. This presents a fascinating possibility. Imagine an ancient traveler, a storyteller, or a merchant crossing the vast and desolate Sahara. They come upon this impossible formation, a perfectly circular arrangement of ridges and valleys in the middle of nowhere. How would they have interpreted such a sight? It would have seemed unnatural, divine, or perhaps the ruins of a metropolis built by gods or a forgotten civilization. The sheer scale and symmetry of the Richat structure could have easily seeded a powerful legend. Over centuries, as such a story was told and retold, the location might have shifted from a desert to an ocean, and the geological wonder could have been transformed in the collective memory into a majestic, circular kingdom that sank beneath the sea. This is not to say the Richat is Atlantis, but rather that it serves as a powerful geological model, a real-world place that proves the central city layout Plato described was not a pure fantasy. It shows how an observed, awe-inspiring natural formation could have provided the literal blueprint for a mythical capital, blending tangible geography with the human impulse to explain the extraordinary through story. Buried in the mud along ancient coastlines lies a subtle but terrifying kind of evidence. Across the Mediterranean, scientists drill deep into the earth, extracting long cylinders of sediment known as cores. Within these layered records of time, they find startling anomalies. In places now far from the sea, nestled between layers of ordinary soil, lie distinct bands of marine sand packed with tiny seashells. These are not normal coastal deposits. They are the geological fingerprints of Paleotsunamis, colossal waves that slammed ashore millennia ago, carrying the sea itself deep inland before retreating. In Crete and along the Turkish coast, these sandy layers are found startling distances from the water, a silent testament to waves of immense power. The correlation is chilling. One of the most prominent of these tsunami deposits dates precisely to the era of the Thera Eruption. This is not just a story anymore, it is a physical fact written in the earth. A wave powerful enough to leave this kind of geological signature would have been utterly devastating to any coastal settlement in its path. It would have scoured the land clean, sweeping entire villages into the sea and dragging ships far inland, leaving behind a landscape stripped of human habitation. For a maritime society, the destruction of its fleet and its key ports would mean an immediate and catastrophic collapse of trade, food supply, and communication. The civilization might not just be damaged, it could be functionally erased from the archaeological record in a single day, its remnants buried under sand or washed out to the deep ocean. This tangible evidence transforms the Atlantean cataclysm from a philosophical metaphor into a plausible historical scenario. The geological record confirms that the Mediterranean has been periodically reshaped by these catastrophic waves, events exactly like the one Plato described as swallowing a mighty kingdom. The story of a great civilization lost to the sea may well be the collective memory of a very real, repeated trauma. A trauma whose signature is written not on stone tablets, but in layers of sand and shell. The world's shorelines are not fixed but fleeting. When the last great ice age ended, our planet underwent a transformation so vast it reshaped the very map of the world. Colossal ice sheets some miles thick began to melt, releasing a torrent of fresh water back into the oceans. This was not a gentle, inch-by-inch creep, but a global deluge in slow motion. Over centuries, the seas rose by about 120 meters, swallowing an area of land larger than the entire continent of Europe today. This process created a global phenomenon of lost coastlines, a geological reality that offers perhaps the most universal explanation for flood myths like Atlantis. Imagine the experience of a coastal community living through one of the rapid meltwater pulses. The sea would not just be approaching, it would be reclaiming the land with unsettling speed. Within a single human lifetime, a familiar coastline with its fishing grounds, freshwater springs, and ancestral villages could vanish forever beneath the waves. The loss would be absolute, a slow-motion cataclysm witnessed by generations who could only retreat and remember. This geological process provides a powerful, global backdrop for the legend of a sunken land. While we may not have found the circular metropolis Plato described, we know with certainty that vast, habitable landscapes now lie submerged on the continental shelves. These were not barren wastes, but fertile plains with rivers and forests, land that would have been highly desirable for early human settlement. Any society established in these now drowned realms would have left no trace above the water, their stories surviving only as echoes in oral tradition. The memory of a prosperous land consumed by the relentless ocean could easily have been preserved, transformed over millennia into the powerful symbol of a punished and vanished civilization. This is not about finding one specific sunken city, but about recognizing that the Earth itself has erased countless homelands. The story of Atlantis, in its most fundamental form, may simply be the story of our own planet's dramatic rebirth after the ice, a memory of a world we literally lost to the sea. The Pillars of Hercules stand as more than a mythical landmark. They are a geological gateway. Plato's specific instruction to look beyond this point, the modern Strait of Gibraltar, directs our search toward one of the most tectonically powerful places on the planet. Here, the immense African and Eurasian plates grind against one another, a slow-motion collision that builds up incredible pressure deep within the Earth. This is not a quiet frontier. The entire region is a known seismic zone, its history punctuated by powerful earthquakes and tsunami events that have, across centuries, reshaped coastlines and challenged civilizations. This volatile nature makes the Strait a profoundly fitting setting for a story of a civilization lost to the sea, a place where the Earth's raw power is on constant display. But the geological drama of this passage runs even deeper. Millions of years ago, the Strait underwent a transformation far more extreme than any earthquake. Tectonic shifts caused the narrow connection to the Atlantic to slam shut. With its primary water source cut off, the vast Mediterranean Sea began to evaporate under the relentless sun, shrinking over thousands of years into a sprawling, scorching desert of salt, with only a few hypersaline lakes remaining in its deepest basins. Then the dam broke. The most accepted theory suggests a massive collapse at the Strait, unleashing a catastrophic flood from the Atlantic Ocean. Imagine a waterfall thousands of times more powerful than any in the world today, thundering for years as it refilled the empty Mediterranean basin. While this event, known as the Messinian salinity crisis, occurred long before humans walked the earth, its legacy is profound. It demonstrates that the Strait of Gibraltar is not a static doorway, but a dynamic valve capable of truly world-altering change. The memory of such a cataclysm, preserved in the very rock layers of the region, provides a geological template for a story of a world being drowned. Could the legend of Atlantis be a distant, mythologized echo of this area's inherent instability? A story born from the very real understanding that the ground here can shake and the seas here can rise with transformative fury. The silent ruins beneath the sea hold the most direct answer to our questions. Off the coast of Egypt, the colossal statues of Thonis Heraclean stand guard on the seabed. A once great port city that vanished after a series of earthquakes caused the soft clay soil to liquefy, swallowing entire temples and harbors. In Greece, the streets of Pavloptri, the oldest known submerged city, are still visible from the air, its town plan laid out on the seafloor as if waiting for its inhabitants to return. These are not legends, they are archaeological sites where divers replace traditional tools, carefully brushing away centuries of sediment to reveal pottery, foundations, and the everyday objects of lives interrupted. The forces that claim them are well understood, a combination of seismic activity, ground instability, and the slow, relentless creep of rising seas. Each discovery provides a tangible blueprint for how a civilization can literally sink, moving the idea of a lost city from the realm of pure myth into the documented record of human history. The existence of these sunken centers proves that the concept at the heart of the Atlantis story is not a philosophical invention, but a geological and archaeological fact. If a city like Thonis Heraclean could be lost for over 1,000 years, its very location forgotten until modern technology found it again, what other urban centers, perhaps even older and more grand, might still lie hidden under the shifting sands of the seafloor? A real cataclysm leaves more than just geological scars. It etches itself into the very stories a culture tells. How does a terrifying event, witnessed by generations long gone, survive for thousands of years before the invention of writing? The answer lies in the enduring power of oral tradition. A volcanic explosion that darkens the sky for years, or a tsunami that wipes a coastline clean, is not just a disaster, it is a defining moment. Such profound trauma becomes a core part of a community's identity, a story told and retold around fires for centuries. Over countless retellings, the details inevitably shift. The timeline of a slow coastal drowning might compress into a single, terrible day and night. The size of the waves can grow with each generation, and the lost homeland can transform from a simple village into a majestic, circular city of immense wealth. This is not a process of lying, but of myth-making, where the emotional truth of the loss is preserved even as the literal facts are sculpted by memory. We see this pattern echoed in flood myths found in cultures across the globe, from the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical story of Noah. These are not mere coincidences, but likely reflections of a shared human experience with rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. The Atlantis story, then, could be the Greek iteration of this universal theme, a specific local legend that was polished and repurposed by Plato for his own philosophical ends. The violent eruption of Thera, the sudden drowning of Doggerland's last islands, or a forgotten tsunami in the Atlantic, these geological events provide the raw physical catalyst. Human psychology and the mechanisms of oral storytelling then weave that raw event into a grander narrative, a cautionary tale about divine punishment and the fall of arrogant civilizations. The legend is the ghost, but the geology is the bone, the tangible evidence that such a world-altering event was not just possible but probable. What other ancient stories, we are left to wonder, hold a kernel of planetary truth within their mythical shells? Plato's account gives Atlantis more than just a map, it gives it an economy. He wrote that the lost civilization possessed vast quantities of a mysterious metal called orichalcum, a substance said to glow with a fiery red light and valued second only to gold. For a long time, this was dismissed as pure myth, another fantastical detail in an already incredible story. But what if this specific clue points to a real, tangible resource, one that would have been the engine of a powerful ancient society? One of the most compelling theories identifies orichalcum as a form of brass, an alloy primarily of copper and zinc. When freshly polished, brass has a distinctive gold-like sheen, fitting the description of a precious, gleaming metal. The entire Mediterranean basin is geologically rich in copper and zinc ores, with major ancient mines located in places like Cyprus, whose very name comes from the word for copper. A society that mastered the complex process of smelting these ores together could have produced a metal that seemed almost magical in its beauty and utility, a technological advantage that would have brought immense wealth and prestige. Another possibility is that orichalcum referred not to a manufactured alloy, but to a naturally occurring one. In the ancient Americas, skilled metalworkers used a material called tumbaga, a blend of gold and copper that was both durable and brilliantly lustrous. While tumbaga itself was not known in the Mediterranean, the concept shows that such naturally impressive materials did exist and were highly prized. Alternatively, some scholars suggest orichalcum might have been a precious organic substance like amber, which can possess a warm, fiery glow and was traded over vast distances in antiquity. The precise identity of the metal may never be known, but its inclusion in the story is profoundly significant. It anchors the legend in economic reality. A civilization described as powerful and advanced would almost certainly have been built upon a foundation of mineral wealth, controlling mines, trade routes, and sophisticated metallurgy. This detail transforms Atlantis from a vague, mythical paradise into a plausible, resource-based power, a society whose rise and catastrophic fall would have disrupted ancient trade networks and left a lasting memory of its lost riches. The search for Atlantis, then, is not just a hunt for sunken rings, but also a search for the ghost of a golden metal that once powered a forgotten kingdom. Plato's timeline for Atlantis presents a paradox that has puzzled historians for centuries. He pins the civilization's catastrophic end to 9,600 years before his own time, a date that lands squarely in the Paleolithic era. This was a world of small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers, not the sprawling, bronze-clad empire he so vividly describes with its grand harbors and sophisticated kings. The two images simply do not align. This discrepancy is often the first reason scholars dismiss the entire account as pure fiction. But what if we are misinterpreting the clue? Geological evidence from that very period offers a different kind of validation. Around 11,500 years ago, the planet was emerging from its last ice age, but the transition was anything but smooth. The Earth was gripped by the Younger Dryas period, a sudden and brutal return to near glacial conditions that lasted for over 1,000 years. Then, as that cold snap abruptly ended, the world witnessed an incredibly rapid phase of global warming. Ice sheets collapsed and sea levels surged upward at a pace that would have been terrifying to any coastal community. This was not a slow, imperceptible change. It was a time of profound environmental upheaval. Could the memory of this global cataclysm, a genuine era of lost coastlines and climatic chaos, have been preserved in oral traditions for millennia? It is possible that the core of the Atlantis story is this ancient planetary trauma, a memory of a time when the very world seemed to be transforming. The specific details of the Bronze Age society, the circular city, and the war with Athens could then be later embellishments, layered onto this older, more primal memory of a great flood. Alternatively, perhaps Plato himself or his sources intentionally inflated the date. By setting the story in an impossibly distant past, he would have granted it a monumental gravity, elevating it from a recent historical tragedy to a timeless philosophical lesson about the rise and fall of all civilizations. The geological record tells us that the world at 9,600 BC was indeed capable of producing cataclysms on an Atlantean scale, even if human society at the time was not. This leaves us with a fascinating choice. Do we reject the entire story because the cultural details are anachronistic, or do we see it as a layered narrative where the deep time of geological upheaval provides the destructive power and a more recent cultural collapse like that of the Minoans provides the societal model? The truth of Atlantis may not be a single sunken city, but a powerful story woven from the very real threads of our planet's turbulent past. Plato's narrative offers one last, remarkably specific clue. He writes that after the island vanished, the sea above it transformed into an impassable barrier, choked with a shoal of mud. This is not the stuff of poetic metaphor, but the language of a sailor describing a genuine maritime danger. Such a vast, shallow area of unsettled debris would have been a nightmare for any ancient vessel, threatening to ground ships or trap them in its shifting sediments. This particular detail points directly to a violent geological process. Imagine the collapse of a volcanic island, where entire slopes give way in a submarine landslide, or the sudden subsidence of a coastal plateau. Either event would churn up colossal amounts of earth and rock, scattering them across the seabed and creating exactly the kind of hazardous, muddy shallows Plato describes. This is not an element a philosopher would likely invent. It feels instead like an attempt to explain a real, documented danger to navigation, a place sailors once knew to avoid, its origin lost to time and woven into legend. The story of Atlantis, then, may not just be about a lost land, but also about the lasting scar it left on the sea itself, a permanent warning written in mud and memory. Plato's description of a vast, rectangular plain surrounded by protective mountains is one of the most concrete clues he offers. He gives this fertile heartland precise dimensions, 3,000 stadia by 2,000, a scale so immense it could easily encompass several modern nations. For a story so wrapped in mystery, this sudden specificity is striking. It forces us to ask whether he was drawing from a real, known geography. One compelling candidate lies just beyond the Pillars of Hercules off the southwestern coast of Spain. There, the continental shelf extends into the Atlantic, forming a broad, shallow underwater plateau known as the Guadalquivir Basin. During the last ice age, when sea levels were far lower, this entire area was dry land, a sweeping plain that would have been both accessible and habitable. It fits the directional clue perfectly, lying beyond the strait, and its scale is reminiscent of the grand expanse Plato described. The mountains he mentions, which he said sheltered the plain from northern winds, could correspond to the Sierra Nevada or other coastal ranges that would have framed this now drowned landscape. Alternatively, they might be the submerged seamounts that dot the Atlantic floor, their peaks once forming dramatic highlands before the seas rose. This exercise in geographic matching reveals a key insight. The legend of Atlantis may not be a photograph of a single place, but a collage. Over centuries of oral transmission, different geographic features from various locations, a circular structure seen in the desert, a vast plain lost to the sea, a ring of protective mountains could have been compressed and fused into one idealized legendary kingdom. The human mind, especially in the art of storytelling, naturally synthesizes and simplifies. A civilization's entire domain, built up from trading outposts and allied territories across the Mediterranean and Atlantic, might have been remembered as a single, unified empire. The Great Plain could be the memory of a primary agricultural heartland, while the circular city could represent a particularly awe-inspiring capital or religious center. When we look for a one-to-one match on a modern map, we might be asking the wrong question. Perhaps the true geography of Atlantis is not a pin on a map, but a reflection of how memory and geology intertwine, creating a powerful legend from the scattered pieces of our planet's ever-changing face. The ground beneath their feet was never truly still. For ancient civilizations living along the Mediterranean coast, earthquakes were a familiar and terrifying force, a reminder of the unstable world they inhabited. A single powerful tremor could reduce a city of stone to rubble in moments. Yet the initial quake was often just the beginning of the disaster. The true cataclysm came from the secondary effects, the geological chain reaction set in motion by the shaking earth. A quake occurring offshore could displace the seabed, sending a tsunami racing toward the coast with unstoppable force. On land, a mountainside weakened by the shaking could give way in a colossal landslide, burying everything in its path. Perhaps most insidious of all was the phenomenon of soil liquefaction, where solid, waterlogged ground instantly transforms into a fluid slurry, causing buildings to tilt and sink as if swallowed by the earth itself. The archaeological record tells this story again and again, with cities literally built upon the layered rubble of their predecessors, each layer a testament to a community's resilience in the face of geological violence. A society living in such a volatile zone would have woven this existential threat into its very identity. How would such a culture explain the complete disappearance of a neighboring city, one day thriving and the next day simply gone? The phrase "swallowed by the sea" is not merely poetic. It is a plausible eyewitness account of a coastal settlement collapsing into the water during a major seismic event, its foundations liquefied, its structures sliding beneath the waves. This is not myth, but a well-documented geological process. The legend of a whole island vanishing in a single day and night could easily be the amplified memory of a real seismic catastrophe that erased a coastal enclave or a small island community, its story surviving long after its physical remains were lost to the deep. Volcanic ash is a silent timekeeper, meticulously recording our planet's most violent moments. When a volcano erupts, it blasts millions of tons of fine rock and glass, known as tephra, high into the atmosphere. This material can travel for hundreds, even thousands of miles before settling gently to the ground, forming a distinct paper-thin layer over everything below. To a geologist, this layer is not just dust, it is a historical timestamp of unparalleled precision. Because each major eruption has a unique chemical fingerprint, scientists can match an ash layer found in Turkey with one found in Egypt or at the bottom of the sea, confirming they all came from the same single catastrophic event. This allows researchers to stitch together a timeline of ancient disasters, correlating destruction across the entire Mediterranean basin. The ash from the Thera Eruption, for instance, creates a definitive line in the archaeological record. Anything found beneath that layer was there before the explosion. Anything above it came after. This method transforms the search for a lost civilization from a treasure hunt into a forensic investigation. If a society like the one Plato described was erased by a volcanic cataclysm, the evidence would not be a vague legend, but a physical reality, a city frozen in time beneath a blanket of hardened ash. Its streets, buildings, and artifacts would be perfectly preserved, sealed away by the very event that destroyed it. While no such metropolis has yet been found beneath an ash layer older than Thera, the geological principle remains powerfully instructive. It tells us that the Earth itself keeps a library of its own past disasters, with each ash layer acting as a dated volume. These layers mark moments when the world changed in a single day, events so profound they could easily become the foundation for a story about a magnificent kingdom, punished by the gods and swallowed by the sea. The enduring mystery is not whether such cataclysms occurred, but which one of these geological time markers holds the true beginning of the Atlantis story. The buoyant rock of our continents refuses to sink, a simple fact of geology that seems to dismantle the entire premise of a lost empire. Yet the Earth story is far more nuanced than a simple yes or no. Continents are not monolithic slabs but complex mosaics. While a landmass the size of Asia could never vanish beneath the waves, the edges of these great plates are constantly fragmenting and reshaping. Consider Zealandia, a true continent in every geological sense, with the same thick, buoyant crust as Australia or North America. Yet 94% of it lies beneath the Pacific Ocean, its peaks forming the islands of New Zealand. This is not a sunken continent in the mythical sense, but a submerged one, a vast land that was once entirely above water and teeming with life before tectonic forces stretched and thinned its margins, allowing the sea to claim it. This process reveals a profound truth, the distinction between a continent sinking and a continent drowning. The rock itself does not give up its buoyancy, but the land can be pulled apart, lowered, and flooded by rising waters. This geological reality breathes new life into the old stories. Before we understood plate tectonics, the 19th century saw scientists themselves proposing a lost continent, which they named Lemuria. They used this hypothetical land bridge, now swallowed by the Indian Ocean, to explain a puzzling fact: how lemur fossils could be found in both India and Madagascar. It was a reasonable theory for its time, an attempt to explain biological mysteries with the geological knowledge they had. We now know that plate tectonics, not a sunken continent, carried those landmasses apart. But the very existence of such a scientific hypothesis shows how powerfully the concept of lost lands resonates even in rigorous circles. The legend of Atlantis, then, might be a pre-scientific attempt to explain a similar geological observation, the memory of a substantial landmass that was indeed lost to the sea, not by sinking, but by the slow, inexorable processes that continually remake our world. Our view of the ocean floor has been utterly transformed, not by draining the seas, but by learning to read their surface. Satellite altimetry works on a principle of profound subtlety. A massive underwater mountain, a seamount, exerts a slight gravitational pull on the water above it. This pull causes the ocean's surface to bulge upward in a minute measurable dome. Conversely, deep ocean trenches create slight depressions. By meticulously mapping these tiny variations in sea level from space, satellites can effectively chart the topography of the seabed far below, revealing a hidden world of submerged plateaus and vast mountain ranges. This gives us the broad brushstrokes of the ocean's canvas. To fill in the fine details, we turn to ships equipped with multi-beam sonar. These systems send out a fan of sound waves that sweep the seafloor like a flashlight beam, returning data so precise it can create stunningly detailed, three-dimensional images of canyons, volcanic vents, and ancient river channels now drowned by millennia. This technological leap has turned the mythical quest for Atlantis into a methodical, scientific survey. We can now take one of Plato's proposed locations, like the Azores Plateau, and evaluate it not with speculation but with cold, hard data. The sonar maps reveal the plateau's true structure, its volcanic peaks and rugged terrain, allowing geologists to determine if it was ever a large, unified island or always a scattered archipelago. We can apply the same rigorous analysis to the Celtic shelf off the coast of Ireland, another area theorized to be a remnant of the lost land. The maps show a vast, submerged plain that was indeed dry land during the last ice age, a landscape potentially hospitable to human settlement. While the search has not uncovered Plato's concentric rings, it has revealed something perhaps more profound. The ocean floor is littered with the ghosts of lost landscapes, real-world templates for a story like Atlantis. Each identified seamount was once an island that sank as its volcanic rock cooled and contracted. Every submerged river valley on the continental shelf marks a coastline from a world we lost. The technology has not yet found a sunken metropolis, but it has proven beyond any doubt that the Earth possesses both the power and the space to hide the ruins of entire worlds. This pattern of global storytelling is impossible to ignore. From the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, where a hero builds a boat to survive a world-destroying deluge, to the familiar tale of Noah's Ark, the theme is repeated across continents. In the Americas, the Mayan Popol Vuh speaks of a great flood sent by the gods to reshape humanity. Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime stories recount how coastlines were formed as the sea levels rose, describing landscapes that are now underwater. These are not isolated curiosities, they are echoes of the same profound event, heard in every corner of the world. The geological reason for this is both simple and staggering. The end of the last ice age was not a local phenomenon, it was a planetary transformation. As the ice retreated, the oceans rose not by inches but by hundreds of feet, relentlessly consuming every continental shelf on Earth. For thousands of years, any human community living near a shore would have witnessed the sea's slow, inexorable advance. They would have been forced, generation after generation, to abandon their homes, their fishing grounds, and their sacred sites to the rising water. The memory of a lost homeland, a greener world now beneath the waves, would have been seared into their collective identity. Each culture processed this shared trauma through its own unique lens of beliefs and values. A society that revered a single god might interpret the flood as divine judgment. A culture with a cyclical view of time might see it as the cleansing of one world to make way for the next. The Greeks, with their focus on heroic city-states and the dangers of arrogance, crafted the story of a magnificent but prideful empire punished by the sea. Atlantis, then, is not an outlier. It is the Mediterranean-specific chapter in a global story written by the Earth itself. It is our most detailed and compelling version of a universal human memory, a story born from the very real experience of watching the world you know slowly, and sometimes suddenly, vanish beneath the waves. The search for a lost world inevitably attracts stories that glitter with impossible wonder. We must navigate these waters with care, separating the spark of scientific inquiry from the glare of pure fantasy. Pseudo-archaeology often wraps itself in the language of discovery, proposing ancient advanced technologies or extraterrestrial architects for Atlantis. These tales are compelling, but they share a common flaw: a complete disregard for the physical evidence written in the earth itself. True investigation follows the clues, no matter where they lead, while speculation often forces the clues to fit a predetermined and often more sensational narrative. Geology acts as our most reliable compass in this search. Take the persistent theory that Atlantis lies buried beneath the ice of Antarctica. The geological record here is unequivocal. The Antarctic ice sheet is not thousands, but millions of years old. Its immense weight has pressed down on the continent for epochs. For a sophisticated, Bronze Age civilization to have thrived there in recent human history, the ice would have had to melt away and then rapidly refreeze, a process that would have left unmistakable scars in the global climate record and the rock layers below. No such evidence exists. This is not a matter of interpretation, but of fundamental, testable fact. By applying this same rigorous logic, we can evaluate other proposed locations. The Thera hypothesis remains compelling precisely because it aligns with volcanic ash layers, tsunami deposits, and the archaeological footprint of a real, advanced society that disappeared at the right time. It fits the evidence. The story of our planet is dramatic enough without inventing impossible technologies or forgotten ice ages. The real wonder lies in understanding how the powerful, yet entirely natural, forces of geology could have forged a legend that has endured for millennia. By grounding our search in scientific reality, we honor the true mystery of the past, a mystery written not in alien hieroglyphs, but in stone, ice, and sea. The very ground we stand on is built to float. Continental crust made of light rocks like granite acts like a colossal raft on the planet's denser, deeper layers. This principle, known as isostasy, is a fundamental rule of our world. A true continent cannot simply sink into the ocean floor any more than a block of wood can be forced to the bottom of a pond. It is simply too buoyant. This single, unshakable fact of geology places a firm boundary around our search for Atlantis. It means the legend cannot be a literal photograph of a continent the size of Asia vanishing into the Atlantic depths. Such an event is geologically impossible, but this is not the end of the mystery. It is a crucial refinement. This reality forces us to shift our perspective, to look for a different kind of loss. Instead of a sunken continent, we must now search for a lost island, a prosperous city-state built on a volcanic hotspot that later collapsed, or the cultural memory of a coastal civilization whose world was flooded by rising seas. The power of the story does not fade with this adjustment. It becomes more plausible. We are no longer hunting for a geological impossibility, but for a historical tragedy written in the language of earth and water. But the stones and sediment can only tell us part of the story. Why does the ghost of Atlantis linger so stubbornly in our minds, long after the geological evidence has been laid out? The answer lies not in the ocean floor, but within us. We are drawn to the idea of a lost, golden age because it speaks to a profound curiosity about our own origins, a nagging sense that some crucial chapter of the human story has been misplaced. This legend serves as a powerful mirror, reflecting our own fears and aspirations. It is a timeless cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, of a civilization that grew too proud and was brought low by the very world it sought to master. In an era of our own environmental challenges, this theme of a society succumbing to a natural cataclysm feels unsettlingly relevant. The geological evidence provides the skeleton of a possible event, the physical mechanism for how a land could vanish. Yet the soul of the story, its enduring power across centuries, is fueled by a fundamental human need. We crave narratives that give order to chaos, that explain our place in the world and warn us of our potential downfalls. Atlantis is more than a potential historical fact. It is a cultural vessel carrying our collective anxieties about collapse and our longing for a forgotten wisdom. The truth of such a legend, then, may not be a simple binary of real or fake. Its greatest truth might be its meaning, its ability to resonate so deeply that we continue to search for its reflection in the depths, both of the sea and of ourselves. The hunt for Atlantis is entering a new era, powered by tools that would have seemed like magic just a generation ago. This is not the end of the search, but a dramatic new beginning. On the cutting edge are deep-sea submersibles, robotic vehicles that can withstand the crushing pressures of the ocean abyss. These are not just cameras, they are mobile laboratories equipped with delicate arms for retrieving artifacts, sonar that can map a lost city street in stunning detail, and sensors that can detect the chemical ghosts of ancient human habitation on the seafloor. They allow us to explore the continental shelves not as a vague, murky expanse, but as a detailed, three-dimensional landscape, searching for the foundations of settlements that were drowned by rising seas millennia ago. The very mud of the seabed is becoming a new history book. Advanced coring technology now enables scientists to extract pillars of sediment dozens of meters long, capturing a continuous, undisturbed record of time. Within these muddy layers, researchers can hunt for microscopic evidence, like pollen from crops that were cultivated or charcoal fragments from ancient fires, telltale signs that humans once lived on land that is now submerged. These cores can also capture the precise moments of catastrophe, sealing within them the sand from a forgotten tsunami or the ash from a volcanic eruption that occurred thousands of years before Thera. Beyond the physical world, our own biology holds clues. Genetic studies of ancient human remains are becoming incredibly sophisticated, allowing scientists to trace population movements across thousands of years. Could these genetic maps reveal a distinct group, a lineage that thrived and then seemingly vanished, their story ending abruptly around the time of a major geological event? Such a discovery would not point to a single island, but to a people displaced by a cataclysm, their memory preserved only in a fading legend. As our models of ancient climate and sea level change grow more precise, we can begin to digitally reconstruct lost coastlines with astonishing accuracy, identifying bays, river valleys, and plateaus that would have been the most desirable places for early communities to settle. This powerful convergence of geology and archaeology is transforming a mythical quest into a rigorous scientific investigation. We are no longer just staring at the ocean's surface and wondering, we are learning to read the stories it has kept hidden for thousands of years. So we are left not with a single sunken city, but with a profound geological echo. The most compelling truth of Atlantis is that it is a composite, a story woven from our planet's own turbulent biography. A cataclysm as sudden and violent as the Thera Eruption provides the narrative's explosive heart, that single day and night of misfortune. This real event gave the legend its visceral shock, a memory of a civilization interrupted in mid-breath. But for the concept of an entire world lost to the sea, we look to the slow, relentless drowning of continental shelves like Doggerland. These were not myths, but vast, inhabited landscapes that truly vanished, their loss felt across generations and preserved in the oral traditions of displaced peoples. The specific, almost architectural details of the capital city, with its concentric rings, find a startling real-world counterpart in formations like the Richat Structure. An ancient traveler encountering such a geological marvel would have had no scientific explanation, seeing only the hand of gods or a forgotten, advanced people. Over centuries, these separate threads of memory, the sudden explosion, the sunken coasts, the mysterious circular ruin, were braided together. Storytellers, poets, and finally a philosopher like Plato fused them into a unified epic. This process transformed scattered geological trauma into a cohesive cautionary tale. The story served a deeper purpose, warning of the dangers of hubris and the unforgiving power of nature. We will never dredge a signpost from the ocean floor with the name Atlantis engraved upon it, because Atlantis was never that kind of place. Its reality is far more distributed and, in a way, more true. It lives in the shared human experience of living on a dynamic planet, one that remembers in its rocks and sediments the many worlds we have lost. Our geological journey reveals a powerful truth: that Atlantis was never a single place waiting to be found on a map, but a profound story written by the Earth itself. We have navigated from the ash-covered ruins of Thera to the sunken plains of Doggerland, from the circular wonder of the Richat Structure to the tsunami-scoured coasts of the Mediterranean. The evidence confirms that a literal continent vanishing into the Atlantic is a geological fantasy, yet the legend is far from false. It is a haunting echo of very real cataclysms, of volcanic fury that darkened skies and tsunamis that reshaped coastlines, all set against the backdrop of a world drowning under rising seas. Atlantis endures not because we found its walls, but because it speaks to a deep-seated understanding of our own fragility. We live on a planet of immense and unpredictable power, a world that can give rise to civilizations and just as easily reclaim them. The geological record does not debunk this ancient tale. It gives it a home, showing how human memory can weave the threads of real, shared trauma into a timeless myth about hubris and resilience. Our search for a lost kingdom, then, becomes a search for our own place in this grand and dynamic story, a reflection on how we remember, how we warn future generations, and how we find meaning in the forces that shape our world. If this exploration into the deep past has captivated you, we would love to hear your own thoughts and theories in the comments below, and subscribe to join us on our next journey into the great mysteries of history.